On the evening of December 29, 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401 took off from John Kennedy International Airport in Queens, New York, to Miami. The flight had 176 passengers in addition to 13 crew members. The plane used in the flight was L-1011S model. This plane was one of the latest types of planes at the time and was very expensive. This type of plane could accommodate 400 passengers. The plane was divided into two floors. The first floor, which was the main cabin containing the passengers, and the second floor, which contained the kitchen and the lounge for the crew. This floor was located at the back of the plane and could be reached by two elevators. The captain of this flight was called Bob Loft. He was 55 years old, and he had more than 30,000 hours of flying experience. The assistant captain was named Bert Stock, who was 10 years younger than Bob. With them in the cabin was the plane's engineer, Don Repo, who was 51 years old, and Angelo Donato, an employee of Eastern Airlines, who was 47 years old, was also with them. At 9:20 p.m., the plane took off from the airport to Miami, and the flight was very quiet, and there was nothing to worry about. But after about 2 hours, everything turned upside down. The plane had approached Miami Airport, and the captain was preparing to land at the airport safely, but he was surprised when he found that the light for the front wheels of the plane did not work, and this means that it had a problem and did not work. Then the captain contacted the control tower at the airport to tell them what was happening. The control tower asked him to move the plane away from above the airport until they find a solution to this problem, in order not to disrupt the movement of aircraft at the airport. The captain moved away from the airport towards the Everglades area, and this area is a very large water lake, but its depth is small, and the captain set the plane on autopilot so that it rotates in a fixed circle at an altitude of 600 meters above the lake in order to fix the malfunction in the plane. Captain Bob asked flight engineer Don Repo to go down to the maintenance room to see what caused the malfunction. The maintenance room was located under the cabin and called the Hell Hole. This room was for the control devices of the plane. Engineer Don Repo went down to the room to see the cause of the malfunction, and he could also to see if the front wheels are working or not. On the ground in the lake there were two fishermen who were hunting frogs, and darkness surrounded them from everywhere, because there was nothing around them but water only. Suddenly, these two fishermen saw a very huge yellow light that appeared from the ground at a distance of 5 miles and then disappeared quickly. The hunters decided to go there in order to know the source of the light and what happened there, and when they got there, they were shocked by what they saw in front of them. We go back to the plane 20 minutes ago, when Captain Bob asked the flight engineer to go down to the maintenance room in order to fix the malfunction. Captain Bob inadvertently turns off the autopilot, and this led to the plane landing. But because the plane was descending gradually, no one felt that something strange was happening, and the plane was now descending. Captain Bob and his assistants heard the plane's warning that it was going to hit the ground, but the captain could not do anything, and the plane fell immediately. This was the reason for the huge light that the hunters saw from afar. When the hunters arrived at the place of the plane crash, they were shocked by what they saw. Some of the passengers were dead, and others were seriously injured. The fishermen tried to help the wounded, and the rescue teams arrived at the scene after 30 minutes, and they recovered the bodies of the victims and transported the injured to hospitals. 99 passengers died in this accident, and 77 survived. Among the deaths were Captain Bob and his assistant Bert Stock and flight engineer Don Repo, but Angelo Donato survived the accident. After many investigations, they find out that the accident was caused by Captain Bob's fault, because the front wheels were working well, but it was the light that did not work. The airline paid compensation to the injured and the families of the victims after this accident, and the company pledged to completely change the pilot's training system so that such an accident would not happen again. This was not the end of Flight 401's story, but only the beginning. During the 3 years after the accident, hundreds of employees of the airline company had many terrifying things happen to them. but the company forced them to remain silent and never tell what happened to them. But there are some employees who encouraged and told what happened with them without disclosing their real names, so that the following names are pseudonyms, not real. In March of 1973, 3 months after the Flight 401 accident, the airline employed a flight attendant named Jenny to be on Flight No. 318 from New York to Florida. And with her on this flight was another flight attendant named Denise. Jenny and Dennis was very close friends, but none of them served on the plane that crashed. Plane 318 in which they served was of the same model as Flight 401, which is L1011S. But in fact, Plane No. 318 had some intact parts that were in the plane that fell, as the company found after conducting tests and checks that these parts is still intact and has no faults, so they installed it in other planes of the same model. Jenny and Denise were dividing the work on them, and some other flight attendants, in order to serve 200 passengers. 5 flight attendants were taking orders from the passengers, and the others downstairs were preparing them in the kitchen. Denise was on the top floor taking orders from the passengers and Jenny downstairs preparing them. Denise felt a bit tired, so she decided to go down to rest and talk to Jenny. At the same time, Jenny was going up by elevator, so they did not see each other. When she went up to the top, did not find Denise, and knew that she had gone down a while ago. Jenny decided to go back down to meet Denise, but when she went down, she did not find anyone there. Jenny felt that Denise was in the hall, so she began to prepare some requests. She thought that Denise would come out at any time from the hall, but she never left. Jenny began to feel some fear and tension and went to the hall to see if Denise was there or not. She searched about her well, but she never found her, and she had a feeling that she wasn't there alone, and that someone was with her and she didn't see him. Jenny decided to quickly escape and go upstairs. When she left the hall, she was expecting to find anyone in the kitchen, but she did not find anyone. She quickly went to the elevator to go upstairs, and she still had the feeling that someone was watching her. Jenny went upstairs, and when she got out of the elevator, she collided with another flight attendant named Mildred. Mildred looked at Jenny and found her terrified. She asked her, "Are you okay?" But Jenny was not in a good, and she did not control her nerves and said to her, "I cannot tell you what happened to me a short while ago." Mildred took her to another place where Denise was there. Denise also looked very terrified and not well. It turned out after that, when Denise went down to rest, it happened to her, just like what happened to Jenny. She had a constant feeling that someone was watching her. She searched well for anyone, but she did not find anyone. This was the first time that such a thing had happened to them. But not only did this happen to them, it happened to many flight attendants who were working on this plane. This was not the only story that happened after that, but there were many more terrifying stories. A month later, on the same plane No. 318 at New York International Airport in Los Angeles, there was a flight heading to Miami. A flight attendant named Sis confirmed the number of passengers and found an extra person. This passenger was in the first class. He was wearing an Eastern Airlines uniform. The flight attendant thought that this captain is on a mission called deadheading in the airlines. And this mission means that if there is a captain who must take off by plane from a certain airport, and he is not present at this airport, the airline will transfer him there by another plane is going there. The airline should have informed the flight crew if there was a captain who would perform the deadheading mission, but this did not happen. So Sis went to this person to get his data and register it with her, but he did not answer her. He was wearing a cap and looking down, and he didn't notice her. Sis continued to talk to this person in order to register his data, but he didn't notice her. Some passengers noticed that there was something strange about this person. Sis went to the plane captain, who called George to tell him what was happening. Sis returned with the captain of the plane in order to find a solution to this problem. George spoke to this person, but he never answered him. So Captain George decided to go down to the ground to see the face of this strange person, and here was the shock. When Captain George looked at him and saw his face, he screamed loudly and fell on his back and said, "This is Captain Bob. He is the same captain who was on Flight 401 and died in the accident. How is he still alive and is with them on the plane now?" Some seconds passed, and everyone is in shock from what they see in front of them. But suddenly Captain Bob disappeared from in front of them all. Some of the passengers who were watching what happened screamed in horror. Captain George and some of the flight attendants began to calm the passengers down and continued to search the plane, hoping to find this strange person who had suddenly disappeared in front of them, but they did not find anything. Captain George and the flight attendants submitted a report about what they saw on the plane, but Eastern Airlines did not do anything about this report, but rather concealed this report completely so as not to cause fear among the company's employees. Within 2 years after the accident, many employees reported about strange things that happened to them in L-1011's model planes, which have some bits and pieces from Flight 401 installed, that they had seen some ghosts of people who were sitting on the chairs in the plane, and they suddenly disappear. One of the managers in the company was on a plane, and he saw the ghost of Captain Bob, and he suddenly disappeared again in front of him. He was terrified and started looking for him on the plane, but he didn't find anything either. One of the strange stories that also happened, there was a person who was putting food in the kitchen of the plane when he felt a little tired and went to the lounge to rest. But when he entered there, he saw a man wearing the uniform of the airline. When he wanted to talk to him, he suddenly disappeared in front of him. This employee said that this person looked a lot like flight engineer Don Repo, who died in Flight 401. Plane No. 318 was the most strange plane in which things happened. When a captain and his assistant heard a sound coming from the hellhole that is below them, the captain went down to the room to see what was the cause of the sound he heard, but he did not find anything. And when he climbed again and wanted to close the door in the room, he saw the ghost of flight engineer John Repo below, looking ahead without moving and then suddenly disappearing. On another trip, there was a woman who kept screaming strangely. When the flight attendants came to her, she told them that a man suddenly appeared sitting on the chair next to her, then suddenly disappeared too. Not all strange phenomena were like this, but there was a strange incident that saved the lives of many people. When the captain of the plane reached the cabin, he saw the ghost of the engineer John Repo, but this time the ghost spoke to him and told him that there was a serious malfunction in the plane's engine. Then he disappeared in front of him. The captain went to verify the words of this ghost, but he was shocked when he knew that there was already a malfunction in the engine that would lead to a disaster. Finally, in 1974, all the strange and terrifying phenomena that were happening stopped. The airline said that all this was just illusions and never real, but the truth is that in this year, the airline did maintenance for its own planes and removed all parts that were installed from the plane incident 401, although it was working efficiently and without giving any reasons. And here the story of the ghosts of Flight 401 ended. I hope you like it. Do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive all new stories. Thanks for watching.